Joining us now, former Boston Police Department Superintendent-in-Chief Daniel Linskey. He's now a fellow at the Duff and Phelps Institute for Good Governance. Chief, you've heard the DA in Manhattan say he thinks this is going to make this city safer. What's your take?
Yeah, I think it's about time to stop politics and focus on public safety, right? So both sides are on soapboxes. What they need to do is come to the table and have a conversation about designing a public safety strategy that the community wants and the police and prosecutors can provide in New York. Discretion has always been there. Cops not arresting people for shoplifting. Every day in my social media feed, I see a police officer who's paying for a family that was shoplifting clothes or food for their children. That's accepted by all sides. So a lot of that is rhetoric. What we do need to do is, John, you're a pilot, right?
Yeah.
And pilots have checklists. What works and what doesn't work. We know that focusing our resources on targeted violent offenders is what we need to do. We know that including the community in our policing strategies has been effective in what we need to do. We know that working together, police, prosecutors, probation, judges, parole, public service agencies, that's a solution to these challenges and problems. And as soon as we can get away from political discussions and focus on what the community wants. If the community doesn't want a crime to be prosecuted, they'll rally their legislators and ask that it be repealed, rescinded, or revoked. And that's where we need to work together on case-by-case basis. Not every shoplifting is a shoplifting. The folks who are going into Gucci stores with sledgehammers and crowbars and stealing $1,000 bags, that's not shoplifting. That's armed robbery. It needs to be treated as such. And I think it's less about political pundits and conversations and more about sitting down in the trenches, working together. But the mayor and the district attorney have 4 years to work on making and improving security in New York. And I think they can do it if they come together at the table with their experience and their teams working hand in hand to identify those truly violent offenders and the challenges facing our communities today.
But he even suggested that armed robbery is not a crime that he's going to pursue vigorously. Howard Safir used to be the police commissioner in this city of New York. Here's what he had to say about the new DA's proposals.
He was elected to prosecute crimes, not to change the law. And what he's doing here is changing the law and enabling criminals to do outrageous things. This is stupid. My advice to the people of the city of New York is start a recall election right now.
It was, under the Giuliani administration when they started going after small crimes, turnstile jumpers, the broken windows policing, that New York City really got cleaned up. A lot of the guys responsible for little crimes were doing big crimes as well. So does Howard Safir have a point?
Howard Safir has a point, but I think it's a little early to make that point. We've heard some words and we've heard some policies and some speeches. Let's see where the actions are. If the DA is legitimately dismissing armed robbery cases and putting victims in our community in New York at harm, then I think the residents and the community should hold him accountable. If it's more about thoughts and ideas, and the default is we're going to see if there's a way that, if this person's drug addicted and no one was seriously hurt, there's a way we can do something other than putting them in prison. Okay, maybe that's what we do. But I think it's all a case-by-case basis with hopefully professional prosecutors who look at each case on the facts that there are and make smart decisions, working hand in hand with police officers who are helping to make those decisions, who are on the street every day advising them.
The New York Post took a look at his proposals and put out an op-ed titled thus, Alvin Bragg's psychotic policies are a gift to the GOP, it says. And it goes on to read, every Republican candidate at every level for every office in the United States can and will cite Bragg's memo as a vanguard document of the Democratic Party. That from John Podhoretz. Is this a political issue? Is it going to resound, I guess I should say, to hurt Democrats nationally?
We have seen these issues where progressive DAs are trying to get away from traditional prosecutions. And in some areas, it has helped address crime. In Boston, we've got a progressive DA who had some very controversial issues, but yet we saw a reduction in crime. Because even though there was disagreement on the how and the what, the day-to-day, the prosecutors were working hand in hand with police to make sure we provided a safe and secure environment for the citizens of Boston. In other communities, it hasn't worked, where prosecutors have just turned a blind eye and have shut the police out and the community out from some of those conversations. And again, going back to that checklist, it's about cops, community, and prosecutors working together. And that's federal, state, and local level, trying to deal with the challenges we face in securing our society. At the same time, having a just police system, a just justice system that allows people to make mistakes and to not have that completely destroy their life for the rest of their time on earth.
It's one thing to allow judges and maybe prosecutors to have some discretion, but if you announce that you're just not going to prosecute armed robbery anymore, aren't you just inviting more armed robbery?
We saw that originally when the new DA came into Boston, where an announcement was that shoplifting was no longer prosecutable. So people were shoplifting when a police officer took them into custody, was saying, you can't do this. The DA says this is legal. That's not what the DA is saying, not what the DA can say. It's still a crime. If you want to change it from a crime, the citizens can have the legislature change it. Cops can still arrest people, hold them in custody. If the DA decides not to prosecute or to charge a fine up front or to put pretrial probation, fine. If that circumstance is right, it's somebody who's made a mistake, a teenager who screwed up, absolutely. If it's an ongoing retail theft ring and somebody who's got a record and keeps going back to the same store, they need to be held accountable. There need to be consequences for that. And those decisions need to be made each day by prosecutors and cops working together on the problems involving crime in their community.
We'll see what happens here in the city of New York. Daniel Linskey, the former Boston Police Department Superintendent-in-Chief. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.